Hot Mic
on the networks of WDAY. Here's Dom Izzo.
Welcome back, everybody. Friday morning edition of Hot Mic rolls on. We went from one legend to another. I can't believe your agent let you come in studio. Randy Hedberg, what's going on?
Well, there is a fee coming. There's a fee coming. Got to pay those agents. And
so Karen was just telling me about how many different sports she coached at one time, and you were sharing the story. Cordell actually told the story last week at one time that you were football coach, you were the basketball coach, and you were the baseball coach all in 1 year at Minot State.
Well, when I was hired, Dom, at Minot State, I just gotten done out of the NFL, and they told me they didn't want me anymore in the NFL, which was there was probably reasons for that. But I then ended up going back to Minot, and they hired me as an assistant football and assistant basketball coach, and I worked in admissions in the admissions office. So I travel around during different times of the year. But that lasted, I think, 2 years. Then I became the head football coach, but I still kept the title as assistant basketball coach. So I'd coach football and recruit football through December, and then I'd go coach basketball January, February, March. Well, my brother Rick's, it was his freshman season, so he played football for me in the fall, and then he played basketball. And in January of that freshman year of Rick's, the head coach got fired, and I became the head basketball coach.
That's amazing.
And then I then ended up being the head baseball coach because the basketball coach that got fired was the baseball coach also. So I took all three of them, and I didn't do the basketball just that year, but I kept the title as head football, but I kept baseball for a couple of years, but enjoyed that. But that was an interesting year.
So tell me now, it's been official for a year and a half. I asked you, I want to say, media day prior to last season, 2023, about how long you wanted to keep going, and you laughed at me. But how long had you had this in your mind? Like, okay, I think X is ready when I'm ready to be done.
Good question. My wife was working at Roger Maris Cancer Center here for Sanford Health, and she kind of made a plan to finish up on January 1st. And so we talked about it, but there was nothing set in stone for myself because she's still working part-time. She travels around and speaks at a lot of different conferences in reference to her job, but she wasn't going to go into the daily routine there at Roger Maris. But so I kind of left it up there, and then I did, I thought about after the 23 season, but then, there were some things I wanted to do myself that I thought was important for myself to finish this off well. And we accomplished some of those goals, and the 24 season turned out pretty good for us. And I enjoyed working with TP, and I thought he did a great job coaching the Bison, and I enjoyed the staff. And Jake and I had a good relationship, and all with it. And one of my best friends in college football, Steve Crutchley, and so Steve and I go way back. We've coached at different spots through the years, and all. So he's one of my better friends in coaching. But so, it came down to that, and I didn't want to do anything during the season. And then we got into the title game in January, and then got into recruiting part of it. And so I just decided at the end, that get out of it and let TP make a decision.
It's so different. You mentioned, like, you could actually, when you started, you could coach football in the fall and then go do basketball. That ain't the way anymore.
No,
I mean, you and I have talked about this. It's nonstop now.
Well, the interesting thing now with college football, I'll use college football for an example, so we have different seasons. You have your recruiting season, you have your playing season, you have your camp season. And also we would go from, we started in late July and in practice. And so you're on the field in late July and you finish January 6th. That's a lot of meetings. That's a lot of hours in the office. And I mentioned this at the press conference. You spend more time with your coaches, your fellow coaches, than you do your family, really, than you see. But and that's probably what Sherry wanted. She was okay with that for my wife. But anyway, it was kind of one of those deals that, now in the month of June, we do our camps at NDSU, which are heavily we recruit heavily out of that, but we do all these satellite camps, and so you're traveling different parts of the country to do all these different camps at different spots. And I remember going down to St. Louis area to a camp last June, and there was 2,500 kids in one day.
Yeah.
In one day.
Wow.
2,500 kids got cycled through that thing. Now, it was well organized.
Yeah.
I'm not, but
Yeah.
But I don't know how you could keep track of some of that.
It's a lot.
It was a lot. It was a lot.
I know Kolpak asked you this, so I'll maybe phrase it a different way so you don't zing me. But what do you think? Come next July, next August, what's that going to be like for you?
Well, it'll be interesting that way. I haven't experienced it before, Dom, so I don't know how I'll respond. But I've got some things lined up. Some people have reached out to me about doing some work with them during August in the preseason in the college football area. So I might do some of that. I do have visions of traveling around and going to some college games the month of September, different spots.
Good for you. Awesome.
I've always, I attended my first college game last week when Cam played in the Shrine game.
You were in the stands, right?
I was in the stands.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe people kept going up and down the stands or the concession stand. We got to play. They got to watch the play. I hadn't, in 45, 46
when's the last
yards.
time you actually sat in a
Yeah,
game?
right. I was thinking about that. Sherry and I were thinking about that, and I go, I don't know the last time I actually attended a game, and a college football game and watched it. So that was kind of interesting, but but it was fun.
To now have this over, and I know it's still fresh for you, but what's a couple memories, thoughts come right to your mind? Say, boy, that was awesome to be a part of that, to be in with this and we accomplished this. That was really special to me.
I mentioned, the things that come to mind right away is my first game coaching for the Bison was at Iowa State.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this in the press conference, but I didn't know what to expect. We're going down there playing an early, I think it was 11 a.m.
Yeah, it was 11 a.m. kick.
Yeah, and it was warm, and TP and I are up in the booth, and it's Carson's first start.
It was.
And we fell behind 14-0, and we came back, put 34 straight on them. And I remember going into the locker room after the game, and it was such a calming feeling in there that the players I took away from it. I said, and it had no doubt they're going to win the game. And, that isn't, I didn't know how to expect it, coming into it, especially because 13 graduated some really, really good players for the Bison. And, we came in with a lot of young guys and Carson, obviously, but it was pretty special.
I don't know if I ever asked you this, knowing when Chris offered you the job, you recruited Carson. How big of a sweetener was that, knowing if I go, I'm going to work with this kid?
Well, yeah, when I was at SIU with Dale Lennon, we offered Carson a scholarship out of Bismarck Century, and knowing that he probably wasn't going to come to SIU, but I remember the next day after we offered him, Scott Fuchs, who was recruiting the state of North Dakota for the Bison at that time, called me and said, "Did you guys offer Carson Wentz?" And I said, "Yes." And then the Bison offered, but after that, which was a good investment for them, for the Bison.
Worked out, yeah.
But yeah, so, and Chris, I don't think there was I had not met Chris Kleiman prior to meeting him the day I got to Fargo. It was kind of interesting because I was recruiting for SIU, and I told this story before, but I driving on the highway someplace in Missouri, I think it was, and my phone rang, and it was a 701 area code. I knew it was North Dakota, and I pulled over, and it was Chris asking me if I had interest in the job, and I said yes, I would, and then it presented, went on from there. But so they won the 13 national championship was on a Saturday. Obviously, the next day, Sunday, we were in Fargo at Chris's house. And it was Connor Riley was there, and Matt Entz and TP was there, and Nick Gazer and Chris and myself. So that's kind of how it started that way. So
that's
it
was powerhouse there.
Yeah, that was a good coaching staff to start out with.
Is there a road in North Dakota you have not traveled? I'm trying to think, because you literally honestly, I've talked to so many, and I'm saying this because you're here, so many coaches that say, hey, Randy was here, or Randy was here not that long ago.
Yeah.
I know that's important to you being in North Dakotan, but seriously, is there a road that you have not traveled in this state?
Well,
There's
been a few.
Well, you've been to Beach, to
yeah.
Langdon, to Waupun. I mean, Hettinger. I don't know. Is there a town you haven't been to?
Well, we tried to hit everyone.
Yeah.
And that had a high school football team, and whether they had a player or not, and I think that's always neat. It's kind of interesting. I try to explain this to other coaches on our staff. One of my favorite stops was Hillsboro, and when Scott Olson was the head coach, his parents ran the hardware store. So I never went to school. I met Scott at the hardware store, which was tremendous.
Yes.
And I just really appreciated that. And, one time I remember going to a bank because I met a guy, he was a banker coaching. Cordell's high school coach was a rancher.
Yep.
He ranched. And so that doesn't happen other than probably in North Dakota.
Oh,
where
no
you
way.
have those
Yeah.
situations. And it's really kind of special. I try to stay away from, when I traveled the state of North Dakota, I tried to stay away from I-29 and I-94 because I wanted to drive the back roads and see the small towns, whether they were still operating or not. Because back in my day, they might have had a basketball team.
Yep.
They probably don't have a basketball team anymore. And that was always special, Like, for instance, I remember going to when I was young, my older brother was playing in the state Class B basketball tournament. And Osnabrück, he played Osnabrück. And I don't know when was the last time they had a high school or school. So I had to go. One time I remember going up to the Langdon area. I went to Osnabrück.
Yeah.
Because I wanted
Just
to see it.
Yeah.
I wanted to see it. And it's not anymore, as far as the school goes. But those are the things that I think are neat.
Well, two things on this. We got to go to break. You got a couple more minutes for me?
Oh, yeah.
One, you can go to the Class B basketball tournament now.
Yeah, I
you
guess
used to
I
always
can.
text me about that
Oh,
you couldn't go because of what was the reasoning on that? That you were going to get an unfair advantage? You wanted to go see your nephew play.
That's the NCAA.
Yeah.
That's an NCAA rule. That's not a NDSU rule, but that's just kind of the way it goes. You had to be a.
So you were forced to watch me, which was always great because you would always text me when I was on the air.
I actually turned the volume down and listened to somebody on the radio. Somebody different.
That sounds completely accurate.
Did that.
But you can do that now.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
And also,
that's the plan.
you would tip me off like, hey, I think this school's going to be or they're going to co-op now because you'd be out there. You'd know that I don't know how long they're going to have their own team anymore.
Right. Yeah, and it's too bad. Some of these schools are having to dissolve co-ops because of, going to AA football or whatever they call it now. I don't even know the names of some of those, but that's frustrating out there, I think. And I think some of these schools really are suffering, especially on the west side of the state. So.
All right, let's break. We come back. We'll chat some other stuff here with can I say legend? The legend, Mr. North Dakota.
That'll soon end.
It's not going anywhere. Randy Hedberg in studio with us. Back on Hot Mic right after this. Welcome back, everybody. Friday morning show rolls on. Randy Hedberg joining us in studio. I got about 8 million questions I don't have enough time for. If you want to give me a great old Class B basketball story, you got one from playing days?
Oh, shoot. Well, when I was a senior in high school, which was numerous years ago, we had an undefeated season in football. And but the playoffs, they hadn't started the playoffs yet in North Dakota. Football playoffs. So we went undefeated. Nothing happened after that. Went into basketball, we're undefeated. Going into the final game, we're 27-0. Go and play Hillsboro, and Hillsboro hammered us, and we ended up 27-1. So that's one I relate to quite often. But I do remember coming down, and we played a lot of different games, and we couldn't beat a little town called Plaza when I was when I was a ninth grader. And 10th grader, Plaza put out they had a group of guys that came through, and they were pretty good. And they were just, I would consider Plaza a suburb of Parshall, but it's only 10 miles apart. But we never could beat those guys when we were young.
All right, where's the definitive place to have the Class B basketball tournament? Is it Minot or Bismarck?
Well, that's a great question. When I was playing, it was in Minot because it was at the City Auditorium.
Yeah.
And so then, now the dome is a little bigger. Yeah, I don't know. That's
Bismarck,
a really good question.
Bismarck loves it.
Yeah, Bismarck does a good job
Yep.
with it. I would think you'd rotate it between those two places. Bismarck's a little more centrally located, off 94, so easier to get to probably for most people. But I would say one of those two places.
Is there a player recruiting wise you saw and like, oh boy, we have to somehow get this guy? Like you saw him like automatic, we got to get this guy. Is there one that not even in any issue, anywhere you were coaching, like somehow we got to find a way to get this player?
Well, this one's going to be well, the best player. I remember this is when I was. I don't know where I was coaching. It might have been St. Cloud. I can't remember where I was at. It might have been North Dakota. But we go to the Metrodome, and Joe Mauer's playing.
Oh, okay.
In Durham Hall. He was the best player I've ever seen play. High school player that I've ever seen play in person.
He's all right.
Yeah, he was probably the best. And obviously, he's in the Hall of Fame now. But he was probably the best one. We didn't have a shot, obviously, but he's the best player I
and
saw
he's
play.
playing quarterback, correct?
Yeah, he's a quarterback. I would let me think of that one for a second. Let's come back to that.
Was he?
one.
I don't know this. Was he a lefty?
No, he's.
It was a righty.
He's right-handed.
Man,
yeah. He was good. He was really good.
That's a pretty darn good one. On that, we found some vintage video from your days with the Buccaneers.
It's got to be black and white, right? No,
but I mean, was your first game there? It is. I mean, we were playing the Philadelphia Eagles at Veterans Stadium. Look at that guy.
That was the opening game of the season.
Look at this guy.
Yeah, that was the opening game of the season. I had no idea.
Where do I get that jersey?
Well, I'm not going to tell you. I know where it's at, but this was wild. I was trying to throw a quick throw there, and
you knew exactly the play. I know you did.
Yeah. I was if that guy wasn't open, I was going to run. So it was one of those deals. But yeah, I was on my back quite a bit during those first couple of years.
And that's Tampa Bay. I mean, around you, that was not. You did not have much talent around you, did you?
Was tough. My second year with the Bucks, they drafted Doug Williams, who was really a good player.
Yep.
He was a really good guy. I really liked Doug, and Doug was a good
obviously
quarterback throughout the years.
Went on and won a Super Bowl in Washington.
Sure. Yeah.
The experience, for people that don't know, can you share the story on draft day? Because I know it's so different now of your draft day of when you found out, or someone told you.
Well, here's the deal. So I was student teaching in the spring, because at that time, I was 4 years. I was in college 4 years. We didn't redshirt, obviously.
Did you have any hint, by the way, you were going to get drafted?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought I was going to get drafted. Okay. I thought I was going to get drafted by the Packers. I really did. They had spent the most time with me during the draft process, and they'd come and watch me play hoops and all. And then, but when I got the draft day, the first day, I kind of took a day off from student teaching and thinking I was going to go in that first day. Well, that wasn't going to happen. It didn't happen. So the second day I go out and I'm teaching. I was, when it actually happened, I was teaching tennis, actually telling people, do what I say, not what I do in tennis. But yeah, then my roommate took the call from John McKay, and who we had an apartment or something someplace. But that's kind of.
Did you think he was pranking you? Like, hey, John McKay called for you?
No, not at that time. The funniest thing, I've told this story numerous times. We didn't have pro days. We didn't have the pro days like they have now, or the combines, or anything like that. And I remember I played baseball for 4 years in college, and had a great experience in baseball. But I remember pitching the first game of a doubleheader, the 7 innings, and I pitched it. And in between games, there was a scout there watching me, and I don't remember where he's from, but he had me throw the football in the parking lot in between games. This actually happened.
Awesome.
And then I took the Wonderlic test in the back seat of his car.
That I remember you telling me.
Yeah. So it's changed quite a bit.
How'd you
I've told
do?
that story to. I probably flunked that one, yeah. But I told that story to Carson and Easton and Trey. They've all heard that one. But how times have changed.
You mentioned those 3 names. Cam Miller's name, obviously, is going to be the next. to have that lineage, Randy, I know you're a humble guy, but you're going to send 4 guys consecutively to the National Football League. What's that mean to you?
Well, I'm proud of all of them. They're all different. All 4 of those guys you mentioned, they're just different type of players. They had their strengths and their weaknesses, and each one is different that way. But they had one thing, that really made them special, and it was how hard they competed and how hard they wanted, and the passion to learn, and that was the key thing. Carson was that way. He was just highly competitive, and Easton the same. Well, all of them were that way. That's kind of the way it worked. And I was very fortunate to come in and inherit Carson, and then Easton was there, and then Trey took over. And what they've done, the lineage, what they've done and on how to prepare is passed on to our current guys. And, now Cam took it over from Trey, and now Cole's going to take, and Nathan and Trey are going to take it over from Cam, and it's going to go on. And that's the best part of the whole scenario that's happened with those guys.
But your name's attached to that. You got to feel like that. You left your mark. Your mark will always be there with Bison football.
I'd like to say this. I probably learned more from them than they learned from me. I really do. I learned a lot from those guys and how to prepare and how to practice. And, sometimes, during a practice, the good ones like them, they're so locked into practice, you don't have to talk to them during practice. They just go out and play. And that's the way they all were, going back. And really when I came into NDSU back in 2014, I was learning from Carson, because it was NDSU's offense, and Carson knew that in and out. So that was my first year was kind of tough because I was still learning everything about it because it was totally different, the terminology and everything. And but as we progress, and I mentioned this the other day, what we're doing right now with quarterbacks at NDSU is more advanced than what we were doing in 2014. It's just kind of every year we've added something, and now
another wrinkle.
Now Cam is in a different spot than probably Carson was in 2014, just kind of gotten that way.
Have you got over the fact that Easton didn't win the Peyton, and when will you get over the fact that Cam Miller didn't win the Peyton?
Well, the Easton thing really irritates me, as you well know, because he was the best player.
Yeah, there's not a doubt in my mind.
He was the best player. And it goes back, that was in 2018. In 2017, Chris Streveler should have won it from South Dakota. Yep. He was the best player. And it was all based on stats in those two. Our quarterbacks aren't going to throw for 5,000 yards. It's just not going to happen at NDSU. And then with Cam, Tommy Malot's a good player. I take my hat off to him. He was a really good player. But you look at the number. If you're looking at stats, Cam's stats are better than Tommy Malot's. And from the year I'm talking about.
Yep.
And so I guess that's where I would come from. But Cam, we talked about this right after the game, right at the table, and we're going to prove it on Monday night. Yep. We said that who's the best quarterback, and I think it was pretty obvious.
No doubt about it. Before we go, we have your coaching resume. I don't think I knew that you were at Central Missouri. What was that experience like down there?
Well, I went from Minot State to Central Missouri State. I had a guy, Terry Noland. I met him. He was an assistant coach with Pat Burns at the and Pat was a header at University of North Dakota way back when I first started coaching. And Terry was defensive coach for UND. Well, he reaches out to me through a guy by the name of Rob Bollinger, who was coaching at North Dakota. You probably heard that name.
We know him.
Brooks' dad. Yep. Rob's a great person. And so Terry reached out to me to see if I had interest. So I went down there in Warrensburg, just a little outside of Kansas City. And that was a good experience. Had some great teams, great players. And then I went from there to North Dakota, and that was another Rob Bollinger. I replaced Rob Bollinger at North Dakota. But yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, I don't know, was I there 6 years, I think, at Central Missouri? Yeah. Good place.
I mean this. It's been a treat to do this every year with you. I don't know what I'm going to do not to see you all the time because somebody's not going to be busting my chops, especially before the game.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if people know, we talk literally before every game. Normally you're asking me what's going on in North Dakota high school football or vice versa. I really have grown to treasure our relationship. Don't be a stranger, and I'll make sure if you want to be on the show, we can make that happen. People want to still hear from you. Okay.
Well, I got a new cell number. I don't know if I'm going to give it to you, but we might do that. But yeah, I'll be around. We'll be around. We'll be doing some stuff. So anytime.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Enjoy some retirement.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you.
Randy Hedberg joining us, the legend, 45 years coaching football, and he was a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. I love that video. You going to sign this for me? Maybe you can do that. Let's wrap. We come back. We'll do some NFL picks. My dad is coming up. We come back after this.